Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is episode 144 of the Meet the Farmers podcast, and I'm your host, Ben Eagle. Today, I'm heading to the Midlands, Warwickshire to be precise, to speak to mixed tenant farmer Charlie Beaty, farming around 750 acres alongside her dad and uncle. This family business has arable, beef, and sheep enterprises, as well as a contracting business. After graduating with a degree in agriculture from Harper Adams, she travelled around Australia, selling and demonstrating agricultural machinery. Charlie is very keen about promoting the industry. She's a Farmers Weekly columnist and involved in FarmerTime as well. She's also county chair of Warwickshire Young Farmers. So certainly she knows how to fill her time. Charlie, thank you so much for coming on and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm in such esteemed company on this. I'm flattered to be asked.
Oh, you have such a great CV anyway. And just like I said in that, it's really clear how strong sort of PR is for you as well. I watched in the process of researching this, I watched you did a thing for Open Farm Sunday. Which is a little video for that.
I just enjoy talking. I'm just
So tell us about your part of Warwickshire first of all, because you're pretty close to Birmingham and Coventry, aren't you? But you're also in really beautiful countryside as well.
Yeah, so we're this little strip of green belt that is bang slap in between Birmingham and Coventry, and you don't quite realise, thankfully, you don't quite realise how close you are to the cities. But then at the same time, the accessibility is fantastic. Like, going on holiday is an absolute doddle.
I was going to say, because you're right by the airport, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. So that's so handy. We've generally always got a friend's car here because then they save the extortionate parking fees at National. It's very typical mixed farming around here. So mixed livestock and arable, rolling hills on the bit where we are, and it is pretty, but being so close to the cities definitely comes with their downfalls as well. So we are, there's litter everywhere. We are prime fly tipping country, and rural crime is rife. So whilst the accessibility and the ease of holiday taking is brilliant, we are definitely too close to civilization sometimes.
So you're the third generation of your family to your family? Wow, it really is the end of the day. You're the third generation of your family to farm where you are. Could you give us a bit of history of the farm itself and also sort of your family farming history in that area?
Yeah, so third generation here, but as far as how many generations have farmed before me, I couldn't actually tell you. My granddad came and took the tenancy here back in 1958. So my uncle, he was about, 6 months old or something when they moved here. And my other uncle, aunt, and my dad were all born on the farm. So the farming business now consists of my dad and uncle and my mum and my aunt all in partnership together. And I've been home farming for 3 years now. Yeah, just coming up to 3 years. We used to be dairy, so we are called the dairy farm, which confuses a lot of people now. Recently did a piece for the BBC, and they described me as a dairy farmer. And we were doing a piece with sheep in the background. It was
brilliant.
So but we quit dairy back in the mid 80s. My dad was mid-early teens. So I've never known it as a dairy farm. And we've been a mixed livestock and arable farm ever since.
Yep. Have you ever wanted to do anything other than the farm? I seem to think that you wanted to be a vet.
Yeah, and I still do. I'm
really?
No, I always wanted to be a vet. Yeah, ever when I was growing up, that's all I wanted to do. When I was playing vets. Absolutely fascinating. I remember, so this is a bit gruesome actually. So when I was younger, I had a dog, and she broke her leg. She's a Labrador, so she wandered off. We're on a farm. She wandered off, and she got clipped by the tractor. Thankfully, only clipped, and broke her leg. And it was pinned. And when we went into she had staples rather than stitches to hold the skin together. And when we went into the vets to have them out, I was absolutely fascinated by them taking it up. And the vet jokingly said, "Do you want to take the staples home?" And I've still got them. I've still got the staples.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
No, I always wanted to be a vet, and I've always been like, when I was little, I used to watch Vets in Practice, which is, vintage now.
Yep. Classic.
And yeah, absolute classic. So I think we not that long ago chucked out recorded videotapes of Vets in Practice, and I was obsessed with that, and I just wanted to watch anything like that. But I didn't try particularly hard in school. I was very lucky with my GCSEs. I sailed through on absolutely next to no revision and got pretty good.
You're one of those people.
Yeah, but then I thought I could do the same at A level, and that absolutely turned out I couldn't, and I came out with 3 E's and a B. So that was the end of my veterinary career. So that finished when I was 17.
But you ended up at Harper Adams.
I did.
To do agriculture. Tell me about that time.
Yeah, so I did when I was still umming and ahhing about what I wanted to do. My cousin went to Harper Adams, and he absolutely raved about it, had a fantastic time. And I don't know if they still do it. I assume they still do something of the like. They did like a residential kind of weekend. It was a night and 2 days for prospective students, so 16/17-year-olds. And I went on that, and we did like taster courses and taster sessions. And then we had a night in the bar, but obviously on pop. 17. But I had an absolutely wicked time, and I came away and I was like, yeah, I want to go to Harper Adams, which is really lucky, because when I got 3 E's and a B in my AS levels, I was like, heck, what are my options now? And it was either retake my AS levels or drop out and go to college for 2 years.
Okay.
Or the third option was go to Harper Adams a year early and do their access course.
All right. Okay.
And I only really heard about that out of luck of the draw. I'd been to the Royal Welsh back in the July, had my results in the mid-August. I'd made a friend at the Royal Welsh, and that's what she was doing. So I can't remember if she'd not done A levels or whatever. She was a couple of years older than me, but she was like, well, go to Harper and do the access course like I am. So yeah, by pure luck, I found out about it, rang them up. Luckily, with like very strong GCSEs, they were like, yeah, no worries, we'll take you. Didn't tell them, decided not to tell them about the 3s and a B at AS level. That was fine. And 6 weeks later, I packed my bags and I moved to Newport, Shropshire, to begin 5 years at Harper.
Yeah, it's funny where things lead on to. Tell me, what about your placement year? What did you do for that?
So bearing in mind I was always fascinated by livestock and very keen on livestock, I actually chose to go the opposite end of the spectrum. And for my placement year, I went and worked for Class UK, the machinery manufacturer. Yeah. I kind of went into the interviews thinking, maybe I'd like to give like sales and marketing a go, because that was the cool thing that, that was all that's what the fashionable girls did. Like they always the sales or the marketing route, and I thought, let's have a go at that. And thankfully, the 2 chaps that were interviewing me at Class UK saw straight through me and realised and knew I would not be suited to that role. They put me into a dealership. Well, I was based at a dealership in Lincolnshire, so they put me straight into a hands-on out-and-about role, driving tractors, rather than in an office. And I am eternally grateful to them for that, because I was young and naive, and they knew better. So I ended up working, being dealership based. I was based in Sleaford in Lincolnshire, and I travelled mainly across Lincolnshire and Yorkshire. So there were 7 dealerships that I was hopping between, and my official role was sales and demonstrations placement student. So I basically tagged around with the salesman and drove demo machines for them. So it's a lot of moving them to and from different farms. And so we were also a dealership for Lemkin cultivation kit, and the Lemkin guys were fantastic. There were two or three chaps that I worked with particularly, and they were just so keen on like teaching me. Yeah, they were really, really good. They didn't just expect me to take it there and then take it off me and do the demo themselves. They were like, no, because if we can get you to do this, then it's easier for us. They were really, really good. And then over the winter, when it was quieter and less going on the demo front, I spent a bit of time in the workshop as well. And yeah, it was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it, and I learned so much. Like, I was competent on a tractor to start with, but it massively broadened my horizons.
Yeah. Because I mean, what advice would you give to students who perhaps thinking about their placement? Different options.
So for starters, do the placement. Like it was the making of me, and it opened so many more doors for me as well. I think because you get more of an opportunity, because you're not there for that long, you get more of an opportunity to do things that you might not necessarily get the opportunity to do as a graduate. With a graduate, they're kind of taking you for life, so I think they're a bit more cautious about things, whereas with a placement student, there's so many opportunities out there, like for different industries to go into and different, like all the sectors. And yeah, I absolutely loved my placement.
And talking of opening doors, that led you on to a trip down under. Tell me about how that came about, and then also, tell me about what you got up to when you were down there.
Yeah, so at the end of my placement year, I was offered a graduate job with Class UK, and that was to be head office based. And I strongly considered it because they're known for being a fantastic employer. It would have been a great job for me. It wouldn't have been the job for me, which I now know. But at the time, I wasn't sure. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I enjoyed my placement year, but I knew I wanted to travel. That was non-negotiable. So, and I told them, I was honest with them, and I said, look, I want to travel. And they said, well, how about we set you up with Land Power, which is the franchise that owns the Class. Yeah, the company that owns the Class franchise out in Australia and New Zealand. They're looking for kind of a combine demonstrator. Would you be interested? And I'd not really done much combine driving because I was in Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, massive hours.
Yeah.
The combine driving is the one that the salesmen quite enjoy and they want to do.
Okay.
So the most I'd done was moving them from place to place. I'd had a couple of days on one. But of course I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'd love to do it. So I jumped in the deep end with the sharks, didn't really know what I was doing, swatted up loads, watched YouTube videos, everything. And you can't learn to drive a combine like that, but I gave it my best shot. And I winged it and I did all right. So there were a couple of incidences, but overall I did pretty well. I took to it pretty well. I enjoyed it, which is a huge thing. And yeah, luckily for me, the salesman that I worked with out there didn't know the first thing about it. So it was my own free reign. So I travelled out 2 days after graduating. So our graduation at Harper is in September. I travelled out at the end of September. Had all these big ideas of Australia. I landed in Melbourne expecting it to be like 45 degrees, got off the plane and had to put a jumper on. So I was Brilliant. Like, oh my God.
Where have I come?
Already. And I spent a couple of weeks in Melbourne at the head office waiting for things like a credit card and whatnot to come through. And then as soon as that all came through, they flew me out to Western Australia. And I was in a little town called Northam, which is about 2 hours northeast of Perth. So in the central wheat belt, really not that far from Perth at all in the grand scheme of things in Australia. And yeah, I spent like 5 months nearly there, 4 months. Yeah, and I pretty much within about 150 kilometre radius of the dealership, I just travelled on combine from farm to farm to farm to farm and just demoed this combine. And yeah, it was brilliant. I did have an incident on my first farm.
Which was?
Yeah. So
can you talk about this?
So I got the nickname Flexi Lexi.
Okay.
And it's not as dodgy as it sounds.
Are you sure we can talk about this?
Yeah, I'm sure. So we were harvesting barley. I can remember this. And I don't know how they grow it out there, but they grow it in pretty much sand. They don't have soil out there in the central wheat belt. It's sand. And I learned, and in hindsight's a wonderful thing. You shouldn't, if there's a mound of sand there, really there's a mound of sand there because there's something underneath it.
Oh no, I know where this is going.
Yeah, so we're just going along at a fair pace because it's a really thin crop, you can really kick on. And I just thought, yeah, we'll just skim the top off this bit of sand. We went straight through the sand, but we did not go straight through the tree stump that was underneath it.
No.
And it caught right on the end of the header. And it didn't do it. The only damage it did to the actual header was a couple of knife sections. I don't know how it did that, but the face plate at the bottom of the feeder house on the combine, it just warped it. Oh God. So
first farm.
First farm. So that was a fantastic start. So it
was all up from there.
It was all up from there, thank God. And it was like, how did that just happen? And hindsight, like I say, is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
We had luckily another combine that was sitting in the yard of a dealership, the other nearby dealership, which was 4 hours away. So I went down to get that and was driving a brand new Lexion with a very worn faceplate on for the rest of my time out, which, so everyone asked and everyone got told. And that is, yeah. So because it being called a class Lexion, it was, Flexi Lexi. And
fantastic.
Farms are a long way. There's a big distance between farms out there. But you wouldn't think it with how quickly word travels. So, everybody knew.
So after that time, what did you do before you came back to the UK?
So after, so I did 6 months with Land Power, and then I decided that. So they offered to sponsor me. After 6 months, I was meant to be coming back to the UK and going to F Class UK.
Oh right, okay.
After about 6 weeks with Land Power, I realised that 6 months was not going to be long enough. So I said thank you, but no thank you.
Right.
So after my 6 months with Land Power, I decided that I wanted to get my second year visa off my own back because I didn't want to be tied to them. I loved working for them. They were fantastic. The money was good. I travelled everywhere. It was an incredible job, but I just knew I wanted to see a bit more.
Yeah. So
I went and worked on a livestock property in central New South Wales, and they were family friends. I'd spent Christmas with them. I went and spent just shy of 4 months working with them. And this was our summer, so the UK summer of 2018.
Okay.
And it was right in the middle of their last big drought. And I will never forget how barren it looked. And they were a sheep property, but they'd sold all the sheep because they were having a really big problem with lameness. So they'd gotten rid of all of the sheep. I think it was like something like 10,000 head they used to have on the property. It was a 10,000 acre property.
Okay.
And they got cattle in. I can't remember how many cattle there were around maybe 150 or something. So not too many.
Yeah.
But it was just dust. Like there was no forage. So that was really, really eye opening. And it was obviously a worry to the family I was working for, but it was out of their control. So it was just one of those things, it was every week it was a debate, do you keep hold of the cattle or do you sell the cattle? But the cattle were lean, they wouldn't fetch a lot. Or do you keep hold of them hoping that the rain comes, but having to know you could feed them in the meantime? So and in the end they kept hold of the cattle for as long as I was there. And I spent pretty much the whole 4 months with them. I did a lot.
Do you still keep in touch with them now?
Yeah. Really good family friends. They've had a lot of rain there now this year.
Okay.
So the photos, they put photos on Facebook and I can't believe it's the same place. So it's incredible. It's all green and lush and like all the creeks are flowing and things like that. But when I was out there, it was dust. We did a lot of boundary fencing. So their like plan for the kind of next 10 years was to get the whole property, the whole 10,000 acres, exclusion fenced. So they wanted kangaroo fencing around the outside, because half the problem with the drought was that the kangaroos were of such a high density there that anything that was growing, they were just taking straight away.
Yep.
So their aim was to get it all kangaroo fenced. I can't remember how long they want, like over what kind of period, but Yeah, so it's all metal fencing out there. There's no wooden
Wow.
fence
Like I
posts.
said, that's a lot of fencing.
It is a lot of fencing. I can't remember how much we did. It's like 2 kilometers or something like that in this one bit. And it was, up over like rocky mountainous terrain. And yeah, it was incredible. Like it was hard going. But all of us were out there. We were all doing it at once. And I still don't really like fencing. But yeah, so I spent 4 months there. And then I'd spent a little bit of time in Queensland with class as well. And I got a job with one of the class customers driving a combine for a couple of months on the Queensland New South Wales border. So I headed up there in the October of 2018. Spent 2 months with them probably, and then I flew out to New Zealand for 5 weeks for Christmas and New Year and to do a bit of traveling over there. Came back, and then I went harvesting again for the same company, for the same farm.
Okay.
And then just traveled really.
Yeah. So with all that excitement, what brought you back to the family farm?
I was tired of living out of a suitcase, to be honest, which now I look back doesn't seem like a good enough reason to have come home. But at the time I needed to come home for a bit.
Yeah.
I just needed to settle in one place for a little while. Like I was living out the back of my car. It was hard work. So I came home and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I came home. I knew there was going to be it was late spring. So I knew there was going to be work for me on the farm, going into harvest and whatnot. And I thought, I'll decide. And I've just never left really.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm still here. It's nearly 3 years later. And I'm still here. So
still there. So let's talk about your farm itself. Let's talk about the farming operation. So you, as we said in the intro, you're a mixed business. You've got 80 Simmental beef sucklers, 300 North Country mule breeding ewes, and the arable enterprise. So who runs what on the farm, and how does it work?
So it's not really a case of who runs what, because we all do it together, I suppose.
All mucking.
My uncle is less involved with the sheep. He's not really that fussed on the sheep. And I guess the sheep being the smallest enterprise, they're what I've got the most say in now.
Okay.
As in, so I make most of the decisions with that now. And I think because it's the easiest enterprise to hand over, because it's worth the least. So, it's been easiest for them
give her the sheep. Give her the sheep.
Yeah, give her the sheep. This was when the dead price was like £3.50 still.
Yeah.
So we all do it all really. My uncle drives the combine. That's his domain. Sometimes I get, if he has something that he desperately needs to go off and do, he might give me a couple of hours on it over the summer. So that's nice. I don't mind. I quite enjoy corn carting and being here, there, and everywhere. So it doesn't really worry me. And that's about it really. Oh, he does all the sprayer driving as well. I really enjoy the arable side and like kind of the how and why we do it. And I'm getting really into that and trying to, get our enterprises more integrated again. So, social media is a fantastic place for learning what other people do. It gets a really bad rap, but I've learned a lot of social media, and you meet the people you meet through it as well. So the people you can chat to and share experiences with and everything like that. So this year last year we grazed our ewes on our oilseed rape. So we haven't grown oilseed rape for 3 years now, because the last time we grew it, it got absolutely annihilated by flea beetle. So we roasted off and we drilled beans instead. And I spoke to a couple of people and I kind of gave them my case and talked them into us having a go with oilseed rape again. And we've companion cropped it with buckwheat, clover and fenugreek. And the buckwheat did an incredible job. It shot up, went into oilseed rape camouflage mode, hid it from the pigeons, hid it from the flea beetles. The oilseed rape got away. That was fantastic. And then we grazed the ewes on it as well. And that was it kept them going for not as we thought. Dad was thinking we might get like 3 or 4 weeks out of them. It was about think it was 15 days and 17 days field, so not very long. And at that point as well, I was like, they need to come off. Like, because both the fields are. We've got a dual carriageway next to us, and both of the fields are off the side of the bridge of the dual carriageway.
Okay.
So when you're driving up, you're looking down on it, and there was a lot of green leaf matter on the floor still, but not actually attached to the plants anymore.
Right.
When you're driving past and looking down, it looks really green and leafy still.
Yeah.
When you go into the field, because I was checking the sheep every day, when you go into the field, you quite quickly realise actually there's not that much of the plant left.
They need to go now.
Yeah, we need to get these off. I dragged them down and was like, look at this, I need to go now. Because it had been my idea as well.
Yeah.
Well, not my idea, not an original idea, but because it was me that pushed it.
Yeah.
Like, if this goes wrong, if this goes too far and we get this wrong,
it's on you.
It's all on me. So we grazed the oilseed rape this year, and we've also grazed some of the cereal crops. So we put because it's been a nice, kind winter as well and quite dry. I actually ran some ewes on some of the wheat, which was great. So they've taken that down. And then some fat lambs on some others. And the fat lambs, I mean, I put some really scraggy, rotten, rubbish lambs on there. Someone else has moved them and put their sheep on, because the lambs I took off were top notch. That wheat has been like absolute rocket fuel to those lambs. It was fantastic. Yeah, we put them on, and we touched them before we put them on, and we were like, oh, these are a bit lean. And then a few weeks later, we were like, right, we could really just do with seeing if we could have a pull off, and because we do lamb boxes as well.
Yeah.
Right, could really do it with having some for lamb boxes, and we pulled them off, and we were like, whoa, we're gonna have to market as well. So that was great. We'll definitely be doing that again. But yeah, so we all take part in everything, really. It's quite nice. Like, I do get to express my ideas and opinions and bring new things into the business. I do get kept in my place still at the same time, and just checked back, which is good. Sometimes I don't think so, and sometimes it's very frustrating, but I do need checking a bit. So
how as a business are you finding the input cost rise?
Terrifying. I was first spinning the other day, and I had to put fuel in the tractor, and I was like, oh my god, this is the most expensive day I've ever had. It's terrifying, but at the same time, it's probably, so with all the things I'm reading and looking at other people doing, like, I'm fascinated by agroecology and regenerative farming and all that, and looking at ways that we can reduce that. Anyway, I read Gabe Brown's book about 3 years ago now, and 3 years ago, whenever, and I've been kind of like pushing for these little changes for a while, and now with inputs being so expensive, it's forcing our hand. So we've got to look at alternatives. And I tried establishing some dwarf clover onto some potato ground last year. So we have a local contractor that grows potatoes on our land, and I'm not a fan of them because they make such, like, not the contractors, they're really good, and they're early potatoes, so they're off like by end of July. But the potatoes in general just make a mess. Because they're heavy tillage.
And the very nature of potato production.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, right, I want to see if we can establish a dwarf clover onto this land and then direct drill the wheat into it. But we did, and the clover established really well, and I was really pleased with that, but it just wasn't big enough by the time we came to drill the wheat into it, and the drill just ripped it up. So that wasn't a success, but it hasn't completely been written off. I was pretty miffed by it because it was a failure, and everyone, I don't know, you get knocked by failures.
There's no such thing as a failure. So it's always
lesson.
Learning points. Lessons for the future.
Absolutely. Now I know that either it needs establishing earlier or the wheat needs drilling later. But we're still, this year, my uncle's now going on about trying to establish a clover in a standing crop and companion cropping and all that kind of thing. And I will have to remind him that if he's going to do that, then he's going to have to go easy with the sprayer at the same time. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We are looking, and it's forcing us to look at alternatives to synthetic fertilizers. So, There's a seaweed alternative, and our agronomist has kind of just said, yeah, no, don't go with that one for now. And which is annoying because like you see that and I'm like, oh, let's have a go, but apparently it won't be viable for us. But I don't really know enough about it to cast a decision on that or cast a vote on it. But it is good. And it's other things like, we haven't got a massive blackgrass problem, but it's there and it's only getting worse each year. So we've got one field that is full of blackgrass and brome, and we're going to take this year we're probably going to establish like a GS4 or some sort of herbal lay in there, and maybe trying to either take a cut off it and silage it and graze lambs, or either use or lambs on there, and just have a bit of a break there. And it would be nice to start doing that and just putting something like that into our rotation, some sort of legume mixture, because we do have beans in the mixture, but it needs to be more than just that. So while it is scary with all these rising costs and everything, it's opening doors as well. It's not all, I don't quite think that George Eustace understands the severity of it. Getting farmyard manure on everything isn't quite as simple as he makes it out to be, but there are alternatives, and it's now is this opportunity for us to find them and have a go.
You mentioned there's quite a few partners in the business. There's obviously your dad, your uncle, but forgetting all of them for a minute, what would you ideally like to do with the business in the future? I'm sure they will be listening to this as well. So
I might not
tread carefully.
I might not. What would I like to do? I'd like to probably take slightly bigger steps into reducing our reliance on artificial inputs. At the moment it's baby steps, and I understand it as well though, because they remind me that we always have to pay a rent check. We don't own, we're tenants. We've always got to pay our rent, and it's not a case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but it almost is. It's worked. We've made that rent check every year. There's not, why stray too far away from what's working for us? But at the same time, they are both aware that we do need to change. There are changes to be made. So that's one thing, which is a really generic answer, but it is. Okay. And the other thing is I'm really passionate about education. So I think that a big part of the sustainability of British agriculture is building on the relationship or improving the relationship we have with our consumers and the general public. So like you mentioned FarmerTime earlier, and that's a great one. That's really rewarding, chatting to school kids, and they're so much more robust than you think they are. So the first time I did it, I was like really cautious, and I was like, how do I say things like slaughter and stuff like that? But the questions they ask, you're like, yeah, I can say those words, it's not a problem. What year group are you working with? So I've mainly done primary school. Okay. So I think I've only done, so I sometimes get roped into like a one-off call. Okay. And I've only ever done one that's been secondary school, I think. Right. But yeah, so the schools I work with are primary. Yeah. So I've had as little as like, I think there'd be year 1 or 2, year 2 probably. So like 7, and then all the way up to 11, 12. Yeah, 11, 10, 11. And it's massive. Like that doesn't sound that far apart, but the change in the kids is huge. Yeah. Do you think you might, like, I don't know, I'm sort of just, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but yeah, do you think you'd maybe like to do something more concrete with education, perhaps mixing your farming passion with your education sort of interest as well? 100%. So I do often look into the grants that are available, and they're quite limited, to be fair, or either that or I'm just not looking in the right place. I think it's I'd love to be able to do that and open it up properly to school children and have day trips and that kind of thing. Lambing time, we've had the local cubs and the local scouts out, and if any friends say, oh, can I bring the kids up? I'm like, yeah, go on, bring them up, because there's nothing as magical as watching a ewe giving birth and them seeing that for the first time. Like, I've seen it thousands of times and I still find it incredible. Like, I will still, if I'm to a quieter point in lambing and I see a ewe lambing, I will quite happily sit there and watch her.
Yeah.
And I've seen it hundreds of times. I know what happens. Like, I'm well aware of it, but it is same with cows calving. In fact, I think even more so with cows calving, but that's probably because I don't get to see that as often.
Yeah.
Usually I calve themselves and we go out and there's a new calf trotting around. So, which is just the way it should be. But yeah, so having the cubs and the scouts out, and they came out right when we were in the thick of it as well. And they just, yeah, both Dad and I were in our element because Dad loves it. Dad absolutely loves kids. So he was having a whale of a time showing them off and telling them what was going on. But yeah, I would love to be able to do more down that education route and, you know, open the farm up more to school children or to families and things like that. It's just hard with the tenancy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's no, I hear that so often. What are your plans this year away from farming? When I know you're really into your live music, country music, and it's any gigs lined up, or do you sort of taking going with the flow this year?
Yeah, so I've got one at the start of May, which should have gone ahead back in May of 2020.
Oh wow.
So that one's been a long time coming. So again, a country music group, yeah, big into country music, which was amazing out in Australia because it was all over the place. Just come back from a weekend in Glasgow as well at the BBC Country to Country
nice
weekends. That was fantastic too. Really enjoy rugby as well. Massive Leicester Tigers fan. What else are my plans outside of farming? I think Young Farmers takes so much of my time up at the moment.
It must do. It really must do. Let's talk about that. When you have been heavily involved in Young Farmers for several years, and like I mentioned in the intro, you are county chair for Warwickshire. For anyone who hasn't been a young farmer who might be interested in joining, just run through your experience.
Okay, so Young Farmers isn't really what it says on the tin. It isn't just farmers. So I'm part of a club called Coleshill, and actually farmers, so us that are farming in our club are in the minority.
Okay.
Most are, you know, we've all got an interest in farming or the countryside or live in a rural area, if you can really class around here as that rural, because we are so close to the cities. But yeah, it's not just about farming. It, you know, and the competitions and the experiences you get with young farmers, like, you know, we've just been at the area rounds of public speaking and choir and cheerleading and what else have we done? Like there's loads of competitions, and they are
really diverse.
Yeah, there are the agricultural competitions as well, but it's so much more than that. And sports as well. Sports is a huge part of Young Farmers. It is, yeah, a lot about competing. It is for me anyway. I'm very competitive. So yeah, I joined when I was 13. I got to a point where I'd got friends and we had started going ice skating on a Friday evening in Coventry, and I started wanting to go every Friday. And at that point, Mum and Dad said, right, it's time for her to go to Young Farm, because they didn't want me going out in Cov on a Friday night at 30, which, you know, I understand. I get that. So they pushed me towards Young Farmers, thankfully. And yeah, I got involved straight from the start. I'm quite bossy, bit of a control freak. So I got involved with the committee from quite a young age. And then obviously not so much when I went off to uni and then went travelling, had a few years out. And then came home and knew I'd be involved again, but didn't quite think I was going to be involved at county level or anything. It just kind of got mentioned about going on one of the committees, and then I ended up on one of the committees, and then suddenly it comes around to the AGM and nobody's standing as vice chair. So now,
one of those moments where everyone steps back.
Yeah. Right, here I am nearly 3 years later, and now I'm county chair. So, and it's great. I really love it, and it's really rewarding, but it has been a really tough year coming out of COVID.
I was going to say, how was it through COVID, through lockdown?
Yeah, we're a small county, so we like staff wise, we've got our county administrator Sue, and she's great. She is a font of knowledge, and she is like I would be lost without her. But we don't have a county organiser, which a lot of counties do have. So we don't have a paid member of staff to organise events and fundraising and all that kind of thing. So that falls on the shoulders of our committees. And it is a lot to ask unpaid volunteers to do. So many of my evenings are taken up with meetings, and it is rewarding. Like, I think for me, the important thing for me is that I got so much out of Young Farmers that I want to make sure that our juniors coming through now are going to get the same out of it. They're going to have the opportunities to get as much out of it as I did. And that's really important for me.
Before we wrap up, let's turn to sort of the farming issues side of the podcast. What for you, and there are many, but yeah, what for you would you say is up there in terms of one of the most prominent farming issues at the moment?
For me, it's got to be the uncertainty surrounding our entire industry. Obviously, Brexit has brought the loss of the Common Agricultural Policy. Basic payments are being phased out. ELMS is being talked about still, but changing every single day. And we all know it's going to be more of a public money for public goods situation, but nobody really knows where it lies. Like, nobody knows where that support is going to be. And I have so little faith in our government. It's, it doesn't help with George Eustace this week going, oh yeah, we've got loads of farmyard manure, we'll just, instead of synthetic fertilizers. And it's like, you've got no idea and you're making these big decisions for us. And I completely agree that we need to move more towards that, working with the environment and moving away from those artificial inputs. But it's not an overnight situation. It's not just going to happen overnight. We need, especially as a tenant farmer, we haven't got those financial assets to borrow against to make the big investments for those years. We don't have that. We've got our capital and machinery and our livestock, and that is what we have. And to change the way we've done things, we're more than happy to change. We're more than happy to adapt and learn and improve. We want to, but it's not going to happen overnight. And that is terrifying of what's going to be expected of us, really. What the government going to want from us, and in turn, what the consumer's going to want from us. And is it going to be realistic, or are we going to be some of those that don't survive? Which way is it going to go? I don't know.
We always finish the show with the same two questions. The first one, Charlie, if you have a message for the public, any message, what would it be?
We are trying to improve. We want to improve. We are farming to the highest environmental and animal welfare standards in the world, and we know we're not perfect, but we're working towards it. The only way we can ever achieve that is with your backing, with knowing where your food's come from, how it's been produced, understanding the what, why, and how of what we do. There are so many of us out there that are willing to explain and show, as long as it works both ways.
And finally, a message for your fellow farmers. Always the hard one.
Yeah. Wow. Educate, don't berate. It's something I say a lot, and I think it goes for both talking to consumers and within our industry as well. You see a lot, especially one of the bad points of social media, you see so much criticism on there. You'll get someone, a youngster starting out asking a question on Facebook or something like that, and some of the responses on there are just, it goes back to, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're just, we're in an industry that is aging rapidly. We need to encourage new entrants and youngsters in.
Well, we will leave it there. But a massive thank you, Charlie, for coming on the show, honestly. And I just wish you and the family the best of luck for the next few years and beyond. And well done for everything you're doing. I can't remember where I was. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. That was it. That's what I was going to say. What's your handle on social media if anyone wants to follow you?
So on Facebook, we're at Meriden Farm. And then on Instagram, I'm at Globetrotting Farm Girl. which seems a bit ironic because I've been based in Warwickshire for 3 years now, but I was travelling a lot at the time.
So you never know what might happen in future. Maybe keep that handle just in case.
Yeah.
But honestly, no, thank you. Next time, I will be heading up to Aberdeenshire to speak to Nikki Yoxall. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening. And please do also spread the word to anyone who you might think might enjoy the podcast. So I hope you can join me next time. But until then, have a great week.